Hello, algebra people. As we prepare for the benchmark, I wanted to review with you justifying inequalities. I first wanted to remind you about our YouTube links. This is where I have it on my page. If you have Mrs. Osborne, she might have it posted somewhere differently, but you should have access to this. So just wanted to remind you, these are all of the videos that you've already been given about properties and justifying equations and inequalities, so I strongly encourage you to go back and review these videos. Okay, I wanted to start by going through and looking at some assignments that we had given you and creating an answer key or going over them so that you could see them. Okay, so this was a class kick that we did on properties of inequalities, and it had drag and drop the terms below into the table to justify the inequality steps. This first step always is given. That's always going to be the given step, okay? Because that's the inequality or the equation or whatever it is that was given to us. We haven't done anything to it yet. Now, what I want to see is what changed from my first to my second. Now I know for myself that I've edited your guys's, that those of you that have me in class, I went through and I left you comments all over this, and I know Mrs. Osborne has as well. So I do encourage you guys to go back and look at your class kicks, because we do make edits on them, and we write you notes and we leave you recordings. So please go and check those out. What I noticed here is that what made my second step different from my first is that this plus 3 kind of just appeared. Since I'm adding on both sides, that's the addition property of inequality, okay? Because I added on both sides. Now I want to see, all right, well, what happened or what's different from my second step to my third step? What makes my third step different? Well, notice here, our 13 plus 3 looks the same. But here I had a negative 3 plus 3 plus 2b. That turns into just a 2b. So what actually happened here is my negative 3 plus 3 canceled out. Anytime something cancels, it's an inverse. Now, since my operator was addition, I'm going to have to do the additive inverse, okay? Because when I added that negative 3 plus 3, they canceled out. Inverse means to cancel. All right, moving on down the line, I want to see what makes my next step, this step, different from the previous step. Well, 2b, nothing happened. But here my 13 plus 3 turned into a 16. Alright, so the only thing really here is that, my 13 plus 3 turned into a 16. That's just substitution. It's nothing really fancy there, it's just substitution. Okay? So now I'm going to look at my next step and say, what makes this step different from the one before it? So what makes it different? Well, I'm dividing by 2 on both sides. That's what makes it look different than before. So what property says I can divide by 2 on both sides? The division property. So that's all justification is, guys. It's you're just looking and saying, well, what have I done? How is my inequality progressing? Right? What have I done to make it look different? How am I simplifying this? So now I'm going to see, how is this different from what we had before? Well, my 16 divided by 2 looks exactly the same. What changed is over here on the left-hand side. So on my left-hand side, I'll use a different color. My 2b divided by 2 just turned into b. Okay, so what happened? The 2's canceled out. Anytime something cancels, that's going to be an inverse property. Now, the operator that was canceling, I had 2 times b that turned into, just a b when I divided. So since I'm multiplying and dividing, that's multiplicative inverse. I canceled multiplication. That's what this means. All right, now my last thing, I just need to see, well, what looks different now? What's the only thing that makes my last step different from my first? Is that this 16 divided by 2 turned into an 8. And that's just substitution, because there's nothing fancy, nothing really canceled out. We just combine like terms. So anytime we combine like terms, that's substitution. Okay? So there's your first problem from your Classkick. All right, your next problem from the Classkick. Same thing, but with this one, you needed to actually solve this inequality rather, So it tells you here, the first thing that I want to do is the distributive property. So I need to look at these over here and see, okay, what would this be if I distributed? So when I'm doing distribution, this -7 needs to multiply to both of these things in here, okay? So my 5x stays the same. So that means it's either going to be this one or this one. Then my -7 times x would be -7x. -7 times a +1 is a -7. And actually, these are the same thing. I made a mistake when I made this. One of those are supposed to have a plus sign. So, well, that was easy enough. This is the same thing twice. So everyone should have got that right. Okay, so that was doing the distribution property. All right. Now I need to see, well, what makes this look different? Okay, what makes, to get my third step here, what looks different from the step before it? So what's different is my 5x minus 7 turned into a -2x. Do you see how the -7 is the same, the symbol's the same, the 9 is the same, but this right here is what changed. Okay, so I'm not going to drag and drop, guys, because I have to scroll a lot. I'm just going to type. So what property says that I just can combine like terms? This is combining like terms, which is substitution. Substitution. You guys know I cannot spell that word. Okay, so now I want to say, all right, if I were solving this inequality on paper, if I were solving this, what would be my next step? How would I get the variable by itself? Well, I need to cancel out the subtracting 7. How would I cancel out subtracting 7? I would add 7 on both sides. Since I had to add 7 on both sides, that's the addition property of inequality, because I added on both sides. Okay? Now, that's what we had to do to solve this. We added on both sides. That's addition property. Now I'm going to say, okay, well, what makes my next step different from the previous step? So I just want to look at it and see, well, what looks different? Okay, what looks different? Here, if I look on my left-hand side, I had -7 plus 7, but now I'm only left with that -2x. So what happened is that my 7's canceled out. Anytime something cancels, that's an inverse. Additive inverse. Okay, why do I know it's additive inverse? Why is it not multiplication? Because look what we did. We added plus 7 on both sides, so it's additive inverse when it cancels out. If I were solving this inequality, what would be my next step? Well, my -2x, there's nothing to do over here. I can't really simplify that. And then my 9 plus 7, I can put that together. I know 9 plus 7 is 16. Okay, so when we did that 9 plus 7 to get 16 right here, that was substitution. So that was a substitution step. That's why it says that, because we combine like terms. That's what we did. We combined like terms. Okay, because I should use capitals. All right, now I want to see, well, what makes this look different from this? What makes it different? What changed? Well, use blue. Before, I just had a 16. Well, now look, I have 16 divided by negative 2. I used to just have 2x. Well, now I'm dividing by negative 2. Okay? So what property says that I want to divide by something on both sides? Well, that's the division property of inequality. Okay? Because I divided on both sides. So we're doing the same thing. What makes this step look different from the one before it? What changed? What looks different? Well, my 16 divided negative 2 looks the same. But I notice on the left-hand side that something's changed here. My negative 2 divided by 2 canceled out. Remember what we said. Anytime something is canceling, that is an inverse. And since I was doing division, what does division cancel? It cancels multiplication. So this is the multiplicative inverse. All right, then the last step just says for us to do substitution. So all that means for substitution is it wants us to simplify. So what is 16 divided by negative 2? And the answer is negative 8. Okay, so that was your class kick on properties of inequality. I really encourage you guys to go look at your class kick and look at the comments that me and Mrs. Osborne have made on your assignment and the edits we've made to it. Hopefully this video helped you with properties of inequality.